Hello and welcome to Opinionated Marketers with me, Charles Nixon, and Kieran Kapoor. Today we're going to be talking about a variety of subjects, but we're going to kick off with some of the useful applications we've recently seen about artificial intelligence. I've been looking at an element which has been about AI in the accounting software. Kieran, I think you've seen it as well.
Yes, Sage has announced they are launching a co-pilot. Um, the idea is to pull together, as I understand it, I've not used it, the idea is to pull together best practice for SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, to help them with their accounting practices, the sort of thing that previously one would have to have paid an accountant to do. Obviously, it's going to be generic advice. On the other hand, they can pull practices together from a huge number of organisations. I thought it was quite an interesting offering.
I think it is because the complexity of managing bookkeeping for small businesses is, legion with problems, and many organisations find it difficult to find good bookkeepers. So something that offers generic advice is good. One would hope that this would also be adaptive so that it will learn the individual's um, proclivities, I suppose, is the right term in terms of the way in which their business works, their markets work, and adapts, therefore, the best solution that is available from a very complex package. Sage obviously has to adapt for hundreds, if not millions, of variations, and the result of which is that it's almost too complex for one individual. And the element that this brings, of course, is a competitive element or advantage, hopefully, over its cheaper and web-based packages that you see advertised on television these days for small businesses. So one hopes that it is a very good use. There is another use which I came across a couple of weeks ago where I was talking to someone in the printing trade, where they were discussing a presentation from Hewlett Packard in this instance, which was using AI to give best practice in the printing trade for the use of substrates to reduce the printing costs and wastage. And I think that is one of the elements where AI perhaps is at the unglamorous end, but probably will make some of the best impacts on businesses.
Yes, I agree with you. It doesn't sound glamorous, but it's a bit like discovering that drone technology can be used to chase along power lines and other such things in order to sort of improve infrastructure. And you think, oh, drone technology, all sorts of wacky lights, all sorts of things, but actually the way it is used is to help industry with a problem. And I think this is a very interesting use of AI. I mean, Sage says that AI will initially help you to perhaps automate things that maybe you haven't spotted that you can automate. So doing sort of more mass updates, some of the repetitive tasks. I thought it was quite interesting that it says it learns from every user. Over time, it will offer advice on how to improve budgeting and financial planning. So they haven't, I suspect that means they haven't got to that bit yet. But on the other hand, it's still an interesting way of saying, here is a technology, how can we actually use it, as opposed to some of the more egregious uses of AI. I'm getting very fed up with AI generated content in marketing messages that hasn't been checked. I know we had a discussion about beforehand about whether some of the things I'm complaining about are actually AI generated or whether it's just lazy marketing. But you can still tell when something is AI generated poorly because it uses words that one doesn't use in normal language. And I think I think the Sage side and the printing side is much more interesting.
I would agree. The element at the moment of AI that's annoying is its incorrect use or its slightly fake use of natural terms. The element I think that is very useful about the Sage story is that it is called a co-pilot, as Microsoft's is. So it is there to assist. It is not there to take over. It's there to
Mm.
help you benefit from, to use an awful word, routinize applications, what we might have used to have called macros. But now, essentially speaking, we can spot things that are the same day in, day out, and therefore we can put those into something that the software package will therefore take some of the drudgery away from the constant book filing or bookkeeping. And I think that is, very, very useful. It's what software and indeed technology and automation has been about all along. If you can find something that is a routine, doesn't vary very much, and therefore you can make something that is done by either a computer or a machine. And that, I think, is the main trend. The other aspect I think that's quite interesting is to spot new market opportunities. And I did notice that there are some interesting niches opening up now in social media, which probably would take, say, AI to actually spot, because the sheer volume of activity that's going on places like TikTok, which the average marketer isn't going to be able to cover in more than one lifetime. And the one I was thinking of specifically was BookTok, which has been extremely successful in promoting books to younger readers.
And what does BookTok do? That's a new one on me.
Well, essentially, it's a group of influencers, but it's been highlighted because of its influence on this young marketplace, which has led to significant growth in Bloomsbury's, the publishing house's sales, by targeting this marketplace. Which they've discovered or observed, it has been very good for their sales, and also obviously from their perspective of publishing stories from the right marketplace. And I think it's increasingly important for marketers to keep an eye on what is happening in the various niches around, so as to maintain their market orientation. We are spending more and more of our time, obviously, on social media, and the result of which is there are more fragmented usage of it. So we need to make sure that we're constantly monitoring it. And so one of the aspects here, perhaps, is the reinvention of monitoring software.
Yes, I've just looked up BookTok because that, as I said, that was a new one on me. Though it's been around evidently for a while. And Waterston's claim, it's no exaggeration that BookTok has revolutionised the way many of us consume literature, with armies of passionate content creators. I suppose it's a similar idea to sort of broadcasters like the Richard and Judy book recommendations and things. It's a way of helping people navigate what can be a very complex marketplace. I mean, it's very easy to walk into a bookshop and come out with lots of books, in my case, or come out with nothing because you're just so overwhelmed by what's available.
Yes, I mean, as the phrase goes, there's nothing new. So the element here is that we've reinvented an influencer marketplace from the television onto social media. But because there are now 7 to 8 billion people on the planet, all doing different things in different ways on different platforms, it's a very complex world to maintain. I was only having a conversation over the bank holiday weekend about how one particular media used to dominate the entire nation, and that was television, and how everybody would talk about one particular television program when it was broadcast. Now that's very rare.
Yes, and if you missed it when it was broadcast, you missed it. The idea of being able to go back and rewatch is relatively new. Had you spotted anything else this week, Charles?
Not essentially, but the element that did occur to me was I'd noticed that there was a report on a big financial house, which was looking like it was going to be a takeover target because its sales approach had slowed down. And it reminded me that actually market orientation and perhaps slower market growth is the essential for longevity, and that companies need to constantly reorientate themselves to their marketplace. Nothing specific, but just a thought that came back from several stories which I'd read.
Yes, I was intrigued by this. I think it was originally kicked off by LinkedIn. That's not where I originally saw it. It was a discussion about why a company like Starbucks hasn't done as brilliantly in a place like Vietnam, which is passionate about coffee. The suggestion, Starbucks has just opened its 100th store, which is in a country that is passionately coffee orientated, and the size of Vietnam is perhaps quite slow. You could argue 100 stores is pretty good going. But one of the suggestions was that Starbucks went in thinking, I understand the marketplace. We need to teach we need to teach the locals to do a coffee grab and go. Whereas actually the Vietnamese culture revolves around taking time over your coffee. It's as important. It's an important part that you spend time brewing your coffee. It takes up to 20 minutes, but that allows you to have a conversation. And the idea of a grab and go culture that certainly in the UK we have and America has about coffee doesn't really translate. So I thought, again, it was quite an interesting look at, you have to understand the marketplace. You can't just assume that what you offer is going to be the same everywhere, or that people are going to jump to it. And a dear colleague of ours discovered this with chocolate out in Africa.
Yes, he did. Do you want to tell the story? Because I have to say, at the moment, it doesn't recall in full detail to me, but he was basically selling chocolate and ice cream into a West African country, and he was part of a very large conglomerate based in the UK.
Because of the heat, the chocolate was always slightly melted. So decided in a sort of Western executive way, and we're talking about a departed friend, Ian Brownlee, one of the founders of the college, and he decided, in a sort of perhaps a slightly over Westernized view, that they needed to import refrigerators in order to be able to harden up the chocolate, so people had their chocolate cold but hard. Only to discover, actually, of course, locally they liked their chocolate on the sort of slightly mushy side, had got used to chocolate being on the mushy side, and really couldn't see why anybody would want to have this sort of really weird, slightly hard chocolate, which left him with a whole pile of refrigerator. And serious number. It's not like he was kitted up one store. I think it was several hundred refrigerators that he then had to get rid of.
Yes, indeed. Ian would tell this story against himself many times. I think he was also pleased the fact he actually managed to offload the refrigerators on Coca-Cola. But it was quite an interesting aspect of market orientation, which he was quite proud to say. And we all, as marketers, have made mistakes. The element, obviously, is to learn from them and to see them. And that was a very good one, amusing in itself.
Lovely to speak to you again, Charles, and we will reconvene next week.
Indeed. Nice to talk to you. Bye-bye.